Webinar from Knowledge Pool's Learning Discoveries Club. Before we start, can I ask that if you have dialed in using a telephone, so rather than the mic and speakers option, that you use the audio pin in the audio section of your control panel. Everyone will have been automatically muted when they dialed in, but can I also ask that everyone remains muted throughout the webinar, as this will reduce the risk of background noise during the presentation. Today's webinar is being presented by one of our specialist learning technologies providers, Brightwave, who will be talking about next generation learning. The presentation will last for about 35 minutes, and then there will be time at the end to ask questions. However, please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar using the questions box at the bottom of your control panel. This will be monitored during the course of the presentation by both myself and the team at Brightwave, so you shouldn't have to wait too long for an answer. If we spot any trends or themes within the questions, these will be answered at the end of the presentation. Brightwave will also be providing detailed written responses to all questions asked during the presentation, which will be distributed after the webinar, along with a recording of the webinar itself. So I'm now going to hand over to Cheryl Clemens and Meg Green from Brightwave for today's webinar.
Good morning, everyone from sunny Brighton. Thank you very much for inviting us to present today, Rachel, and thank you to everyone who is joining us online. I'm just trying to move my slide on here. I might just have to start again, Rachel, here. Hang on, let's see if that goes on. Lovely. I'm Cheryl Clemens. I'm the Communications and Strategy Director at Brightwave, and I'm joined by Meg Green, our Products and Innovations Manager. For those of you who aren't familiar with Brightwave, we're one of Europe's leading learning technology specialists, and we're absolutely delighted to have the opportunity today to share how next generation learning can respond to some key challenges in the workplace. In terms of what's coming up, I'll be running through 5 factors which we believe are radically influencing how we learn and work, and how the arising opportunities can help us realise the potential of learning technologies. I'll then be handing over to Meg for a demo of our new service tessello, which is our direct response to how learning needs to be social, integrated and business focused. So here's 5 factors that we think are fundamental to next generation learning at work. Number 1, knowledge is our jobs. As the nature of work shifts towards the knowledge industries, learning needs to become part of most jobs. Eurostat, for example, reports that 40% of the EU workforce is represented by knowledge workers. That's 38% in the US. And in the UK, 76% of total employees are concentrated in knowledge and service industries. So whether you're in pharma, banking, telecoms or professional services, you'll be needing to respond to changing market conditions and products while keeping up with latest trends, new technologies and also customer expectations. Now 76% is a lot of people, and they're not all born since 1990. Therefore it's not just the next generation of learners that expect to be able to learn anywhere via multiple devices. Communities of practice to increase flow of industry information, collaboration and peer coaching support are becoming increasingly essential. So in today's knowledge-based economy, speed really matters. Organisations want workers to learn to perform quickly to gain competitive advantage. And over 90% of business leaders want to see greater integration between learning and work. This graph that you can see now on screen from Towards Maturity's latest benchmark results shows the gap between expectations and results. In terms of speed and change, cloud computing has been a significant disruptor, accelerating the creation and implementation of new business opportunities, and we would certainly extend that to learning opportunities. For in this environment of speed and change, a formal course is frequently not the answer. But whilst the formal training course is losing pace, there's no doubt that content will continue to play a key role in learning solutions of the future. But it does need to be responsive in every sense of the word to meet the changing needs of both organisations and individuals. That's responsive in terms of device, so content that can publish to smartphone, tablet and desktop. Also responsive in terms of context, so that the actual content adapts to provide an appropriate experience for that device. And with the introduction of entertainment services such as Netflix, Netflix is a film service that many of you may be familiar with that works across multiple platforms including game consoles, so that includes PS3, Wii's, etc. People are starting to expect their online learning experiences to be continuous and multi-device. And our third factor influencing how we learn and work is that we are all producers now. In our personal lives, many of us are producers of media content, from sharing photos on Facebook and Flickr to uploading videos to YouTube, or providing context around other content that we find interesting on Twitter and through other social networks. Now, in some ways, this is nothing new. Digital changed the shape of media consumption forever decades ago. But the fact is now user-generated media production has reached critical mass. This has been helped along by faster upload as well as download speeds, including the recent introduction of 4G services. Our growth in engagement with online content produced and shared by people like us is overtaking broadcast media and is starting to blur the traditional lines between expert and DIY, participant and spectator. So some familiar images and logos on this screen. Views of Gangnam Style reached 1 billion in December last year. That's 6 months after upload. YouTube now has 1 billion unique users per month. But online video content, fortunately, is not all Victoriana cats, South Korean pop stars, and the Harlem Shake more recently. TED Talks, for example, reached a lifetime total of 1 billion views in October last year, with individual top talks getting over 1 million views in 1 month. And the rise of Khan Academy, which hosts over 4,000 courses for free access, has 10 million students worldwide. So this is really starting to show that the benefits are educational, not just about entertainment, in online, viral and free. Now, YouTube puts this down to the impact of Generation C, which I think is a much more helpful demographic term than, say, Gen Y or Millennials, as it's characterised by behaviour, not age. C here stands for connection, creation, community and curation. Generation Cers are connected, they are expert curators, they like finding stuff that matters to them, that they're interested in, and sharing it. Generation C represent cultural tastemakers and influencers. In the consumer world, they're important to brands for this very, very reason. In the context of workplace learning, Gen C have the potential to be a very positive force, sharing knowledge and encouraging the adoption of technology and content. So from experiences outside of work, most of us expect more interactivity, more control and more engagement. So perhaps it's no surprise that gamification is a word that's buzzing in corporate culture's ear. Recent research shows that it can significantly improve recall and retention of knowledge and skills. And according to Gartner, by 2014, more than 70% of global 2000 organisations will have at least one gamified application. So there's no question that organisations are beginning to understand the power of employee engagement and advocacy, not only in terms of the brand, but also in terms of productivity and performance. And there's some great stuff on this in IBM's Social CEO report that was released last year. More than happy to share a link to that. This introduces our factor number 4. Organisations are starting to get personal. Now, we are all individuals after all, and organisations are starting to realise just how important this is. And in many ways, perhaps this is the irony of social media. Social demonstrates that we are all individuals operating in different networks to meet our particular set of needs and interests and beliefs. And one of these networks is indeed the organisation that we work with. And the organisation should have a strong interest in cultivating engagement with its corporate requirements, goals and vision. The top-down kind of prescriptive model simply doesn't work so well in rapid change, and employees riding this sort of shifting sands that characterise where we work now need a strong shared vision and the right tools, connections and responsibility to help them get there. In these conditions, it also makes sense to apply the same logic to learning. Many organisations using technology-enabled learning second-guess what their employees want and need from learning programmes. However, Laura Overton from Towards Maturity, who some of you may be familiar with, is doing some great stuff in this area, including a learner audit, which I know they're currently trialling with Bupa. I'm sure she'd be delighted to answer any kind of further questions on that service. But what we do know is that 98% of learners say they want more flexibility on how they learn so that they can choose when, what, and how it helps them to do their jobs. And if they're not given these resources, they'll go and find them online for their own individual use. But do we always know what's best for us? You know, how can we make sense of all this interaction with content and other people? Which leads me to our fifth factor influencing how we learn and work. Smart data. Now, big data is everywhere. IBM in their recent report, The Real World Use of Big Data, defined big data by its volume, velocity, variety and veracity. Generally, I'm sure many of you would agree, there's quite a focus on big. But actually, the benefit of any data to organisations and individuals is the smart ways we collect it, analyse it, and also apply what we know to improve things. So what happens when we apply these principles to learning? And you can see a definition here. Learning analytics is a rapidly growing field which is helping us discover what works and what doesn't, so we can use data to drive better learning experiences. And if we correlate this information with business metrics, we can start to understand the behaviours and activities that lead to high performance. And if we then combine analytics with the new learning standard, Tin Can Experience API, we can use the data as part of the live learning process to create better real-time support. In the next part of the presentation, Meg's going to be talking more about Tin Can and what it can do. And this is the silent sixth factor we think is inherent in all of the above, so I've deliberately left it till last, and that technology is pervasive. We're seeing a huge hike in global mobile data traffic. So here you can see from this slide that global mobile data traffic will grow 3 times faster than fixed IP traffic from 2011 to 2016. We're also seeing a huge surge in the number of connected devices globally, once again tripling and treble the global population in 2016. Technology is an enabler, and in the consumer world and in our personal lives, it's pervasive. And herein lies a reality gap. The truth is, most of us have better access to technology in terms of bandwidth, range of devices, and freedom to access what we want at home than we do at work. Habits, expectations, and all the trends, some of which we've shared today, point to a convergence between life, work, and learning. However, opportunities to use technology for informal learning are still severely restricted within the workplace. And core business skills disciplines, as shown on another graph here from Towards Maturity's benchmark report, such as sales and management capability, are just not being as e-enabled as we need. So the gap between learner expectations and reality is growing. The gap between corporate expectations and reality is growing. And you know, as a profession, we're not quite realising the potential of learning technologies. And this represents a fantastic opportunity for us all to make more of an impact. How can we use technology to close the workplace learning reality gap? How can we make it more social, integrated and business focused? And this requires a bit of a shift of thinking from kind of one-off standalone learning interactions to more of an ecosystem that changes with the people using it and the organisations needing it. We believe that learning can respond, and I'd really like to hand over to Meg now, and he's going to talk a little bit more about Tin Can and give a demo of our tessello service. So thank you very much from me. I'm now going to hand over to Meg.
Thanks very much, Cheryl. And just while I'm getting ready for my screens to show, just 2 seconds, I want to reiterate and echo my thanks to Rachel and Knowledge Pool for inviting us to present today. Just 2 seconds here. Right. I don't want to take up too much time before getting into the hands-on demonstration of tessello, but I did want to take a moment to explain our thinking behind tessello and how it, as a next-generation platform, responds to the trends that Cheryl has mentioned in the first half of this webinar. tessello is our answer to the question, how do we make workplace learning more relevant? tessello is a full-service platform which encourages behavior change and on-the-job performance support. It does this by creating a community of practice around a particular subject area, learning objective, or business need, where learners are able to engage with all forms of curated content, including videos, web links, PDFs, e-learning courses, and more, plus content shared and actually recommended by peers. In many ways, we could describe tessello as our supercharged LMS. And so what makes an LMS supercharged? The first point is that learners should be able to find what's relevant to them, but not at the expense of mandatory assessment. tessello works well with the 70-20-10 model, which I'm sure most people on this webinar will be familiar with, to provide informal content as well as mandatory training in bite-sized areas, easily accessible anytime the learner wants to access. In order to respond to increasing expectations with how people interact with technology at home, touching on Cheryl's point here, it is important that a next-gen LMS creates a sustained connection with learners to continuously engage and enable jobs performance support. It needs to be instantly updated, continuously relevant, and available across all devices and platforms. We really wanted to create a platform that more accurately reflects the way that people share information today. As Cheryl mentioned, we are all producers now. Learners want to contribute, and organizations benefit from the emerging and already existing expertise of their workforce. And then building off the last 3 points here, learners need to be able to capture not only their formal learning, but also their informal learning to create a more accurate picture of their learning record as a whole. If we do now recognize that up to 90% of learning happens outside of traditional book learning and training, then our supercharged LMS should not only help provide access to additional information and provide a community for peer feedback and on-the-job problem solving, but it should also be personal to the learners and ideally should be able to be taken with them if they leave an organization. And again, as Cheryl touched on earlier, smart data is arguably more important than big data, and if LMSs begin to track and record not only the progress and pass rates on formally learning, but also can begin to capture information on how learners interact together on the job, as well as informal content and experiences for each individual, organizations can begin to correlate performance to a more complete picture of learning. This can create more business impact for the organization, but will also engage and meet the expectations of the current and emerging workforce. And so how is all of this possible? And this comes back to that not so silent sixth factor, Tin Can API. Now, Tin Can has become quite a buzzword recently in the learning industry. You may also hear it referred to as Experience API. And I wanted to take a moment just to give an overview, just in case it's something that people who are listening to today haven't come across in any level of detail yet. We are early adopters of the Tin Can API with our integration of tessello, and we're delighted and excited both to be involved in the new technology and where it could potentially lead us in the future. I did also want to say, as an aside, that I would recommend looking at the website tincanapi.com, which provides a great background on the Tin Can project and its aims. Tin Can is the emerging modernized version of SCORM. SCORM has served us well, but has its restrictions, as it was designed to work with e-learning content. Its definitions are not flexible enough to allow for a recording of offline and informal experiences that make up a full learning record. Things such as working together in a group or on a project, attending a webinar, or even just reading a book. What Tin Can allows us to do is loosen those definitions so that all learning experiences can be recorded. And then Tin Can also frees tracking records from the LMS and instead provides a personal learning record for each learner, which exists outside the LMS. Today, what this means is that learners can track experiences while not logged into tessello, for example, which I'll show you in a moment. So tracking and capture can cope with an increasingly familiar learning cycle. You can imagine a learner logs into their LMS during the workday, then perhaps they read a relevant journal article on their commute home, and then poke around on the internet a bit later in the evening. TinCan allows this learning to all be tracked back to the LMS. And tomorrow, this may mean that learners can carry their learning records with them between employers. For organizations, TinCan allows for much richer data collection to provide more context and better correlation with which to gauge and predict high performance. So the question is, how have we integrated TinCan with tessello? And so I want to take you into the demo now, and I'm just going to have to switch my screens. I've got more technology than I can deal with today. There we go. And hopefully now you should all be able to see our tessello Sales Academy. As tessello is a learning community, we've personalized our demo to be a sales academy, just to give a nice flavor of how it could be used. This could also just as easily be a leadership skills portal or a product knowledge support community and things of that nature. When you first log into tessello, you'll see that we've tried to focus on a modern, clean interface to remove any potential user barriers. To create an engaged community, I'm sure we'll all agree that half the battle, or maybe even more, is making it very easy to use and making people want to use it. You'll see this central area here called My Learning. These are the mandatory learning modules, and we'll just go in and show you that, as we recognize there is and still need to have structure and clear access to core e-learning resources that a learner must read or complete and pass to do their job. In many ways, you can call My Learning the traditional part of the LMS. Unfortunately, what can happen with a traditional LMS is that learners also need to go to other systems, perhaps, to find and search for relevant material to do their job, perhaps while they're on the job. And maybe they don't know where to look. Maybe they can't find the best material. tessello creates a distinction between core learning and the additional resources, which are the gray tiles to the right here. You can have as many as you like configured to suit your content. The front end just sweeps across like so on the desktop, and then on a tablet it just slides with your finger. Any type of resource can be uploaded into any of these tiles, including the My Learning section, from e-learning to PDFs, web links, documents, presentations, video, audio, etc. And completion of all these items can be tracked by tessello. You can see that we've created some tiles on our demo to match the supporting material that a sales team member might need, such as marketplace trends, brand knowledge, customer service skills, and things around those soft skills as well. What can also happen with a traditional LMS? Oh, actually, before I go into that, let me just show you here. So if you go into one of these areas, you can see that we have different file types with easy-to-read icons that help explain to the user what they are. As I was just saying, what can also happen with a traditional LMS, even if it does potentially house some of these additional materials, it doesn't necessarily focus on the way that a knowledge worker likes to work best. As we recognize that we are expected to take more control of our learning, and also that people experience a wider range of technological use outside of work, what this can mean is that people log off the LMS and then read an online journal at lunch, attend a seminar at the weekend, read a news article online while they're cooking dinner. These are all the kinds of activities that contribute to a learner's full knowledge, but they're all lost to the traditional LMS. This means they're lost to the learner as evidence of further learning, and they're also lost to the organization in terms of correlating learning patterns to high performance. And so this is where TinCan comes in. We've integrated TinCan to enable learners to pull in relevant experiences into the system, into a personal learning record, which is this My Experiences area here on the home page. And this is individual to each learner. So this is my personal learning experience record here, which consists of quite a number of things now. And so I'm just going to show you how we can wrap an experience back into tessello. So you can imagine with my salesperson hat on, as per this particular instance of tessello, perhaps I'm reading around online and I'm not logged into tessello. I don't need to be logged into tessello. Maybe I'm at home. And I've just been reading this article on the 5 best TED lectures for sales professionals, and I think, and I've read them. I thought it was really useful, and I wanted to note that I've done it. So I can click on this Save Experience bookmarklet, which is just an easy-to-install bookmarklet that you just swipe up and then put into your browser. And then if I just type my details, you will see that it pulls in the URL and the title from whatever I'm looking at, but it provides me an opportunity to put in a description. So I can say I read this article, and especially the fourth TED talk is quite interesting. And so I can save that. And then the next time I log into my experiences, oh, there we go, one new one. Click on that, and then I can see that I experienced that just a few seconds ago. And so this is now part of my personal learning record. However, we recognize with tessello that community and sharing best practice is what really strengthens learning, and also that other learners can and really should benefit from the content that learners source individually. This is where tessello comes into its strength, as it allows learners to share their experiences with the larger tessello community. So I think this is such an interesting piece of content. I would like my community to know about it. So if I press this share button, again, it comes up with the details so everybody can access it easily. But then I can maybe pose a question, you know, what do you think? Anything I really wanted to say there, and I can click the plus. And then when I go back and go into the shared feed, you can see that it's come up in live time there. And on the home page as well, there's a feed of the most recently shared information, and then as I've just been in, there's more the longer list of materials. People can also type in free-form comments. Maybe you're working on the job with your team, and you guys have just had a really good idea as to how to do something, and you want to share it. You can type that in and share it amongst the larger community. And then as more learners share and other learners go in, people can, you kind of read the mandatory training, you read the extra materials, and you can kind of like and rate things. You can find stuff useful. You can find things that other people have contributed useful. And then what naturally happens is that the most relevant material kind of bubbles up to the top in the trending panel over here on the left-hand side. And what's really interesting about the trending panel is then, of course, it can be a mixture of mandatory content from the My Learning area, supplementary material provided by organizations for their learners, and also content shared and recommended by peers. In addition, learners can use the dynamic search to find relevant material. So let's say I want to look at time management. So first it will pull up information that is relevant to time management in the system, and then it also attaches into an external search engine. And so if I can't find what I'm looking for immediately in tessello, then I can kind of have a look here. And you know, it might be that I really think this is quite relevant, and then I can just do that whole loop again. I can save the experience, I can say that it's relevant, I can share it back into tessello, and then it's kind of a little instant curation. So in this way, tessello creates a kind of a natural ecosystem of content. But as with all systems, it does need to be maintained and evaluated and curated to really make it continuously relevant for people. In order to enable this, tessello has a couple of additional facets. The first is that it does track usage, and this comes back to Cheryl's point about big data and also tin can. So tessello is underpinned by our learning analytics, which provides two levels of reporting. The first is kind of summary information on overall usage of the system, who's using it when and on what browser, are people using things on tablets, mostly in the morning. It can give you all of that sort of information. What areas are people not using, what content is popular and not as popular, and then you also full granular reporting such as full learner transcripts and detailed completion reports. So what that then provides is a really nice picture of smart data, not just to do with the reporting, but then also to do with what people are actually finding useful in the system and what types of materials people are adding into the system. So then a person who we call a curator, who again Cheryl mentioned as part of the Generation C, can look at these statistics and also at the trending content and make informed decisions about content updates. So, for example, a curator might look in here and see that all the trending information is on a particular subject area, and then they could go out and find additional material that kind of strengthens that area because it's obviously one that matters to the community. Or they could look at the shared feed and see that something from the shared area actually became trending and think, well, actually, I'm going to flip that up into one of the gray tiles, and they can move items and promote them upwards that way. So this combination of learner, peer, and org-led curation kind of creates that ever-relevant changing systems that learners will want to keep coming back to because the information will be updating. Also, if there are new additional resources in any of these tiles, this little white light will show, so it can notify learners when there's new information. So if they've gone into everything, I've been in this quite a lot, as you can see, but if you go into everything and complete it, and then they'll have that the blank circle, but then if you log in later and it's lit up, then you know that there's new content. And lastly, we've also created a leaderboard, which, as you can see, promotes active engagement of the system. I promise I did not fudge it to be first for the webinar, but essentially it's, the points can be provided for activities such as pulling in an experience, sharing and rating experiences, completing resources, completing the My Learning area, which is obviously important, and perhaps if something you share, trends in the system. We do have two versions of this, as we do understand that some organizations and learning communities will be competitive and some won't be. Because this is a sales community and sales tend to be naturally competitive, we've got in leaderboard with points, but also we can do a non-competitive version, which is more about thought leadership and kind of recognizing experts in areas. And so that is our demonstration of tessello. And then if we just go back briefly and just talk really at high level about how organizations are using tessello now. And I just wanted to show this because it touches on Cheryl's towards maturity benchmark graph, that the reasons people are coming to use tessello are for those less E-enabled areas such as leadership skills, product knowledge, and induction as well. And really they all focus on wanting to create an ongoing performance support for learners. tessello aims to provide that platform and community engagement between face-to-face sessions and other learning to promote a continuous learning and job performance support. And so at this stage I wanted to, myself and Cheryl, wanted to thank you for participating. And I guess at this stage I was going to hand back over to Rachel, who hopefully will be facilitating some questions that people might have.
Yes, thank you, Meg, and thank you, Cheryl, for that webinar, for that presentation. I hope everyone found it very interesting and informative. We have got one question that's come through at the moment, which hasn't been answered, so hopefully either Cheryl or Meg, you'll be able to answer this now. Come through from John, one of our participants, who's asked, who makes up the community on tessello? Do you have friends or followers list, or are you sharing with the entire community? So I don't know if one of you would be able to answer that for me.
Yeah, I'll pick that one up, Rachel. Thanks for that. John, thanks for your question. The community for tessello is focused on a whole community, but it would be people that were all there for the same purpose. So perhaps it was a sales team that maybe were dispersed and they wanted to have a community platform to engage even though they're in different locations. And so those organizations come to us and say we have a community of learners around induction or around sales support, or maybe we want a tessello for our leaders. And so at this stage they would all engage together. I hope that answers your question.
Hopefully that does answer the question. Obviously we can follow up with any more detailed information if people need it. I've just put another question out to everyone to see if anyone does have anything else to ask, either Meg or Cheryl. Nothing's coming through at the moment, but please do feel free to get in touch with either myself, or you can see Meg and Cheryl's email addresses up there on the slide on your screen. If you have any questions that you would like to ask after the webinar, they'll be more than happy to provide more information on tessello, on TinCan, or any of the other information you've seen in the webinar. But no, I'm not sure any other questions are coming through. So I think that is probably it. So thank you very much everyone who has attended. And again, thank you very much to Cheryl and to Meg from Brightwave for delivering that webinar for us. If there's anything else from either yourself, Meg, or Cheryl you'd like to add, otherwise that will be the end, and I will end this webinar for us.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say thank you very much for everyone for participating and for the invitation, Rachel. Thanks very much.
That's no problem. All right, have a good day everyone else, and we hope to see you at the next Learning Discoveries Club webinar.